I'm always thinking of you, he wrote to the devotees, whom he addressed as his dear students. I cannot stop my Western world activities, and I have taken leave from you only for 6 months. And it may be that on or before I will come to you again. Kirtananda says from my bodily feature that I am improving. I am also feeling like that. In Delhi, Prabhupada had received a letter from Brahmananda saying that the Macmillan Company was definitely interested in publishing the Bhagavad Gita. In Vrindavan, Prabhupada wrote Brahmananda to sign a contract at once on his behalf. Prabhupada had been considering whether to print privately in Japan or India or to wait for Macmillan. He wasn't concerned with the prestige and financial advantages of publishing through Macmillan. His first concern was to print as quickly as possible. I shall be satisfied with the commission and shall only be glad to see that the books are being read by hundreds and thousands of men. Whatever profit may be derived from it will be utilized for the development of an American house here. Prabhupada stayed in his old rooms at the Radha Damodar temple. Still incapacitated, he was being massaged and cared for by Kirtananda, who himself was listless and tired from the heat. But Prabhupada continued to range from one active and ambitious vision for his youthful Krishna consciousness movement to another. He would think aloud about the volumes of Srimad Bhagavatam ready to be published. If Macmillan would take them and the boys could act on his behalf, there was so much to do. He wanted to return by October and oversee things personally. Temperatures rose to more than 110 degrees, and Prabhupada and Kirtananda had to stay inside with the doors shut and the overhead fan on. Although Kirtananda could barely perform his duties, Prabhupada found the heat bracing and said that it was restoring his health. Then, after the first week, the monsoon rains began and the heat broke. On August 10th, Kirtananda wrote home again. God, is it a hot place? But at last the rains have started again and there is some relief from the heat. You can believe me when I say it was hot. But now it is raining a great deal of the time, and that has made the weather quite comfortable for me. But unfortunately not for Swamiji. Also, I have developed the inevitable case of dysentery, which has been persisting for about a week now. Yesterday began the festival of Julan, in which Radha and Krishna come out and swing for about 5 days. So I made the rounds of about half a dozen temples here. Some of them are extremely beautiful inside, although most are small. Still, I can say this with all truthfulness and sincerity that none are so transcendently beautiful and spiritual as 3720 Park Avenue, Montreal. And I think even Swamiji would agree with me there. Kirtananda's letter gave heart to the devotees back home and confirmed their suspicion. It was not Hinduism, not India. It was Swamiji and chanting Hare Krishna that was sustaining their spiritual life. As Prabhupada's spiritual children wrote from the fledgling centers in half a dozen cities in North America, he would reply, Vrindavan is an inspiration only, but our real field work is all over the world. Even if I die, you're my future hopes, and you will do it. I'm feeling very much for you all. Please let the ball roll on just as it is set. Ramananda wrote from New York asking for an explanation of why Swamiji, a pure devotee, was suffering serious illness. Swamiji had explained that conditioned souls and even beginning devotees are attacked by Maya. But was Swamiji also being attacked by Maya? On August 14th, Srila Prabhupada replied, Don't be afraid of my being attacked by Maya. When there is a fight between two belligerent parties, it is always expected that there will sometimes be reverses. Your country and the Western world is mostly under the grip of Maya and the modes of nature in passion and ignorance. And my declaration of war against the Maya is certainly a great battle. Maya saw me very successful within 1 year, so that I got so many sincere young followers like yourself and others. So it was a great defeat to the activities of Maya. Western countries' youngsters giving up illicit sex, intoxication, meat eating, and gambling is certainly a great reverse in the activities of Maya. Therefore, She took advantage of my old age weakness and gave me a death dash. But Krishna saved me. Therefore, we should thank more Krishna than eulogize Maya. So far as my present health is concerned, I think I am improving. At least I'm taking lunch better than in New York. So as soon as I'm a little fit to return to the field of battle, I shall again be in your midst. Srila Prabhupada envisioned an American house, a place where resident disciples could study Sanskrit and Vaishnava literature in Vrindavan. When he had suffered his stroke, he had said that Rai Rama should finish the translation of the Bhagavatams. He had also requested Achyutananda, Gaurasundara, and others to learn Sanskrit, Bengali, and Hindi so that if he did not recover, they could carry on his work. And he hoped that some of his leading men like Brahmananda, Hayagriva, and Rai Rama would come to India, obtain property, and establish his American house. Even if I am well, he wrote on September 9, it is not possible for me to look after the affairs of the American house. Prabhupada decided to ask one of his godbrothers, Swami B.H. Bon Maharaj, to accommodate some students from America at his Institute of Oriental Philosophy. Swami Bon Maharaj's institute was a provincial college of about 300 students located in Vrindavan and affiliated with Agra University. It was what is known in India as a degree college, an institution geared towards improving the economic condition of its graduates by making them eligible for better jobs. When Srila Prabhupada and Kirtananda visited Swami Bon Maharaj at the Institute of Oriental Philosophy, Swami Bon received them in a clean parlor furnished with chairs, couches, and a radio. Swami Bon, wearing leather slippers, shorts visible through his thin dhoti, and an iron shirt with brass studs, appeared suave and sophisticated. An educated man with straight, neatly parted graying hair. Although a resident of Vrindavan in the 1930s, he had spent several years in England, where he had been received by members of the royal family and had lectured at a number of colleges. But he had aroused no lasting interest. When Prabhupada had been struggling alone in New York in 1965, he had written to Swami Bon asking for help, but Swami Bon had not responded. Even now, as Prabhupada told him of the work in America, Bon Maharaj didn't have much to say, but he was interested in the prospect of Americans coming to live and study at his institute. Foreign students would enhance the prestige of the institute in the eyes of the government. He said the students could possibly be accommodated free of charge. Encouraged by the meeting with Bon Maharaj, Prabhupada wrote several letters to his disciples, inviting them to come and study Sanskrit. If you want to learn Sanskrit, there is ample opportunity in this institute. We had some preliminary talks, and it is hopeful that Swami Bon can give us some land for our own building. But even so, arrangements can be made with the existing facilities so that there would be no difficulty for the students who come here to study Sanskrit and the Goswami literature. It is a good opportunity for our students, and I shall be very glad to learn how many of you desire to come. So for today, for Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, I'll leave this here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. And just moving on to the verse. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, Mataji. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll start with the verse. Paradevata Pradadigatatma Pratyava Marsena Anupravritebhya Putrebhya Imam Yatha Dayam Vibhajya Bhukta Bhukta Bhogam Cha Mahisim Mritakam Eva saha mahavibhutim apahaya swayam nihita nirvedo hridhi grihita hari vihara anubhavo bhagavato naradasya padavim punar evanusara. And I would someone else also like to read, please?
Mataji, which verse it is?
Hare Krishna
It is,
Mataji, can I recite it?
yes,
Yes.
it's Srimad Bhagavatam 5.138.
Okay.
Paro devota prasadadigātma prattavarmashe nano pravritteja putrebhyo imam jathadayam vibhajya bhukta bhogancha mahishim mritakam eva sasha vibhutim apohaya sayam nihita nirvedaridhi grihita hari viharanubhavo bhagavato niradasya padavim punarevanush sasaro. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna, beta.
Krishna.
Okay. Oh. Where is it? Oh, Krishna. 38, eh?
5.138, yes.
Thank you. पर देवता प्रसाद अग्निगत आत्म प्रत्याव मरे सेनानु प्रवृत्ते भया पुत्रे भया इमाम यथा दायं विभाजया भुक्त भोगां च महिषीम् वृतक्कम् एव सह महाविभूतिम् अपाया स्वयं निहित निर्वेद हृदि गृहीत हरि विहारानुभावो भगवतो नारदस्य पदवीं पुनर एवानुससार. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else? Okay, I think I'll move on to word-to-word translation. Para Devata, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prasada, by the mercy. Adhigata, obtained. Atma Pratyavamarsina, by self-realization. Anupravritebhya, who exactly follow his path. Putrebhya, unto his sons. Imam, this earth. Yathadayam, exactly according to the inheritance. Vibhajya, Vibhagya, dividing. Bhukta Bhogam, whom he enjoyed in so many ways. Cha, also. Mahisim, the queen. Mritakam Eva, exactly like a dead body. Saha, with. Mahavibhutim, great opulence. Apahaya, giving up. Swayam, himself. Nihita, perfectly taken to. Nirveda, renunciation. Riddhi, in the heart. Grihita, accepted. Hari, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vihara, pastimes. Anubhava, in such an attitude. Bhagavata, of the great saintly persons. Naradasya, of Saint Narada. Padavim, position. Puna, again. Eva, certainly. Anusashara, began to follow. Translation. By the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Maharaj Priyavrata reawakened to his senses. He divided all his earthly possessions among his obedient sons, He gave up everything, including his wife, with whom he had enjoyed so much sense gratification, and his great and opulent kingdom, and he completely renounced all attachment. His heart, having been cleansed, became a place of pastimes for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, he was able to return to the path of Krishna consciousness, spiritual life, and resume the position he had attained by the grace of the great saint Narada. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. As enunciated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Shiksha Ashtaka, Cheto Darpanamarjanam Bhava Mahadavagni Nirvapanam. As soon as one's heart is cleansed, the blazing fire of material existence is immediately extinguished. Our hearts are meant for the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This means that one should be fully Krishna conscious, thinking of Krishna, as he himself advises, Manmana Bhava Madbhakto Madhyaji Mam Namaskuru. This should be our only business. One whose heart is not clean cannot think of the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Lord. But if one can once again place the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his heart, he very easily becomes qualified to renounce material attachment. Mayavadi philosophers, yogis, and gyanis try to give up this material world by simply saying, Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya, this world is false, there is no use of it. Let us take to Brahman. Such theoretical knowledge will not help us. If we believe that Brahman is a real truth, we have to place within our hearts the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, as Maharaj Ambrisha did. Save Mana Krishna Padaravindayo. One has to fix the lotus feet of the Lord within his heart. Then he gets the strength to be freed from material entanglement. Maharaj Priyavrata was able to give up his opulent kingdom, and he also gave up the association of his beautiful wife, as if she were a dead body. However beautiful one's wife and however attractive her bodily features, one is no longer interested in her when her body is dead. We praise a beautiful woman for her body, but that same body, when bereft of a spirit soul, is no longer interesting to any lusty man. Maharaj Priyavrata was so strong by the grace of the Lord that even though his beautiful wife was alive, he could give up her association, exactly like one who is forced to give up the association of a dead wife. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Na dhanam na janam na sundaram kavitam va jagadish kamaye mama janmani janmanishvare bhavatad bhakti rahetuki tvaye. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service birth after birth. For one who desires to advance in spiritual life, attachment to material opulence and attachment to a beautiful wife are two great impediments. Such attachments are condemned even more than suicide. Therefore, anyone desiring to cross beyond material nescience must, by the grace of Krishna, be freed from attachment to women and money. When Maharaj Priyavrata became completely free from these attachments, he could again peacefully follow the principles instructed by the great sage Narada. So just moving on this verse, I'll just share this. Om Jnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Shrinvadam Swakatha Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridiyantasto Hiya Badrani Vidunoti Surit Satam Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. And again, Om Jnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langate Girim Yat Kripatam Aham Bande Shri Guru Dinataranam. So from the previous verses in the same chapter, the activities of Maharaj Priyavrata, from the life of Priyavrata Maharaj, we can see that he was initially detached from worldly opulence and then became attached to his kingdom, and then detached again from material enjoyment, and thus achieving liberation. Priyavrata Maharaj had received transcendental knowledge from his spiritual master, who was Narad Muni, and therefore he did not want to enter into the kingdom or lead the kingdom and enjoy any materialistic enjoyment. But at the request of demigods and Lord Brahma, he did. Priyavrata Maharaj is a Mahabhagwat and therefore a pure soul, as established from previous verses. And even from the previous verses, the other things that have been established is that all affairs of the world are run by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and one cannot avoid the order. This is something that even, I guess, now from outside of a spiritual perspective, a lot of people, they are following into that by saying, we'll leave things up to the universe, or, this is beyond our control, so we'll just leave it up to the universe. But it's actually the Lord of the universe, who's controlling everything, who has decided everything previously, along with our previous karmas. And one cannot avoid the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even if they may have performed any severe austerities or have any material opulences, which again, because Bhagwan, he has all the 6 opulences of wealth, fame, strength, knowledge, beauty, and renunciation. Whatever it is, it's nothing in front of him, that we have. But Krishna is all attractive. He attracts everyone. But the one thing that attracts Krishna is his devotional service. For example, in the embankment of separation by His Holiness Gaur Govinda Maharaj, he mentions about how after killing Hiranyakashipu, when Prahlad Maharaj was sitting on his lap, he had this desire to feel, and Prahlad Maharaj was feeling very protected with Narsimadev, and Lord Narsimadev had the desire to feel the same feeling that Prahlad Maharaj was feeling, in his shelter. And then in his incarnation as Lord Ram, that was when that was fulfilled, with Dashrath Maharaj. He was really loving towards him, and they had that bonding, whereas Narsimadev was just had come out of a pillar. And then in Lord Ram's incarnation, because he was a king, he was Maryada Purushottam Lord Ram, he wanted to enjoy with his friends, enjoy childhood activities with his friends, and this desire carried on to Krishna's incarnation, where he was enjoying with the cowherd boys and in cowherd boys and the gopis, and then all of these are still devotional service. Dashrath Maharaj had devotional service in Vatsalya to Lord Ram. Krishna, all the gopas and the gopis had Sakya and Madhurya, devotional service in that. And in Lord Krishna, he wanted to understand, how does Radharani, how does she feel to be a devotee? And with that, he came as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And today is also the appearance day of Advaita Acharya, who on the bank of the Ganges worshipped Ashila with Ganges water and Tulsi, and called upon Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to appear. And just again in this same chapter, going back to the translations of text 13 and 14, my dear Priyavrata, by the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all living entities accept different types of bodies for birth and death, activity, lamentation, illusion, fear of future dangers, and happiness and distress. My dear boy, and text 14 is, my dear boy, all of us are bound by the Vedic injunctions to the divisions of Varnashram according to our qualities and work. These divisions are difficult to avoid because they are scientifically arranged. We must therefore carry out our duties of Varnashrama Dharma, like bulls obliged to move according to the direction of a driver pulling on ropes knotted to their noses. So living entities, the living entities accept the body by the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and are bound to the Varnashrama system by qualities and work and psychophysical nature. And again, in 15, 16, and 17, there's the importance of being self-controlled and sense gratification in whatever form is considered dangerous. So in text 15, it's mainly just remaining situated as conducted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And also regarding any enjoyment and suffering due to the karma, which is in the past. And text 17, even if one goes from forest to forest, one who is not self-controlled must always fear material bondage because he's living with the six co-wives, which are the mind plus the five knowledge-acquiring senses. Even householder life, however, cannot harm a self-satisfied learned man who has conquered his senses. So again, the importance of being self-controlled. One doesn't need to go to the forest for any sense control. If, as Priyavrata Maharaj was, if one is self-controlled within the householder life, then even the mind and all the five senses cannot harm them because he has conquered it. But sense gratification differs from being comfortable enough to still be able to perform a devotional service. For example, and just expanding on that further is, if we look at the definition of sense gratification, that basically means to squeeze out the maximum pleasure out of the senses. And being comfortable means that understanding that we all have certain needs. For example, someone may need X hours of sleep, which would be different to somebody else. But for them, that is what is required to be able to function, to not fall asleep while chanting in the morning or anytime, or even falling asleep while driving or anything of that sort, and making things a lot worse. So therefore, sense gratification, until and unless it is centered around Krishna, it doesn't cause any harm. But sense gratification, where we try and squeeze out all the pleasure out of our material senses, can cloud one's intelligence and consciousness. And initially, it may be something that appears like nectar. For example, just to satisfy the tongue and the tummy, someone may decide to have thousands of gulab jamuns or rasgullas, and at that time, it may seem like nectar. Maybe nectar up until the first 5 or 10, but anything more than that and more towards the end, it'll start to appear like poison. For example, food poisoning or tummy ache or anything of that sort. And this is an example of spiritual and material life. But even in material life, sense gratification can lead to downfall, and an austerity to some extent is required. For example, if someone goes to the gym to stay fit, that's when austerity is required. Or for our health, we'll limit certain kinds of foods, which we could really like, but it's not something that would be good for us. So staying away from it would be austere. And in scriptures, sense gratification is considered an obstacle, as it leads us to being complacent on the path of Krishna consciousness. And instead of being used to serve Krishna, they get involved in serving ourselves. And again, so going back to text 38, Cheto Darpana Marjanam was mentioned. Chetadharpanamarjanam bhavamhadavagni nirvapanam. As soon as one's heart is cleansed, the blazing fire of material existence is immediately extinguished. So just with this one, I was reading up on something that Chaitanya Charan Prabhuji wrote. So I just wanted to touch base on that as well. With this one, Chaitanya Marjanam, just with these first three words, which is as soon as one's heart is cleansed, or it's the cleansing of the heart. The mind can be considered as three things: either the window, a TV screen, or a mirror. Basically, anything that requires cleaning. Just touching back on complacency. The opposite of complacency is determination. And how do we become determined? So these verses show us how we can be determined. So the mind can be considered a window, a TV screen, a mirror, or basically anything that requires cleaning for us to be able to see clearly. For example, again, if we're driving, if the windscreen's not clear, we won't be able to see clearly. We'll end up crashing into the car in front of us or at the side of us. And a clean mind is considered serene and like pure water, such as the blue springs in Rotorua, which are crystal clear and very, very calm. So once it's crystal clear, it's very, very calm. And it's free from impurities, which means, and what are impurities? Impurities would be desires other than the desire to serve Krishna. And in this cleanliness of mind, which is free from the impurities, the mind is set on serving Krishna, not serving our senses. That's when we can serve Krishna fully. And just touching on to this bit, Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam. Is the Sankirtan movement is a prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is a life of all transcendental knowledge. So Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, in his article that I was reading, he explains this as a white lotus blossoming in moonlight. The white lotus, the lotus itself is the consciousness, and moonlight is the holy name. So once the lotus comes in the holy name, it is blossomed, and the blossomed lotus is known as Krishna consciousness, which is progression from being self-conscious to being Krishna conscious. And just touching on the lotus thing as well, even in text 19, Lord Brahma says, "My dear Priyavrata, seek shelter inside the opening in the lotus feet of the Lord, whose navel is also like a lotus, and thus be able to conquer the six organs, the mind, plus the five senses." So if our consciousness deviates from Krishna consciousness or from the lotus feet of Krishna, and does not deviate, and it still remains in the lotus feet of Krishna and in the holy name of Krishna, which is non-different from him, then it will be cleansed and blossom. And just touching back here on Vidya Vadhu Jivanam. It is translated as, "It is a life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, and it enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious." This basically mentions about Krishna's internal potency, and Krishna's internal potency is defined as the spiritual energy of Krishna, which is the living entity or the soul minus the matter. And this spiritual energy is enlivened in our heart, and it's enlivened in our heart by the presence of the Lord, and it enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we're always anxious. So with this, just touching on Bhagavad Gita 10:10, Tesam satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami bhukti yogam tam yena mam upayantate. To those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. I mean, this is a short part, but we still have time, so we can read on that. In this verse, the word Buddhi Yogam is very significant. We may remember that in the second chapter of the Lord, instructing Arjuna, said that he had spoken to him of many things, and that he would instruct him in the way of Buddhi Yoga. Now, Buddhi Yoga is explained. Buddhi Yoga itself is action in Krishna consciousness. That is the highest intelligence. Buddhi means intelligence, and yoga means mystic activities or mystic elevation. When one tries to go back home, back to Godhead, and takes fully to Krishna consciousness in devotional service, his action is called Buddhi Yoga. In other words, Buddhi Yoga is the process by which one gets out of the entanglement of this material world. The ultimate goal of progress is Krishna. People do not know this. Therefore, the association of devotees and a bona fide spiritual master are important. One should know that the goal is Krishna, and when the goal is assigned, then the path is slowly but progressively traversed, and ultimate goal is achieved. When a person knows the goal of life, but is addicted to the fruits of activities, he is acting in Karma Yoga. When he knows that the goal is Krishna, but he takes pleasure in mental speculations to understand Krishna, he is acting in Jnana Yoga. And when he knows the goal and seeks Krishna completely in Krishna consciousness and devotional service, he is acting in Bhakti Yoga or Buddhi Yoga, which is the complete yoga. This complete yoga is the highest perfectional stage of life. A person may have a bona fide spiritual master and may be attached to a spiritual organization. But if he is still not intelligent enough to make progress, then Krishna from with him gives him instructions so that he may ultimately come to him without difficulty. The qualification is that a person always engage himself in Krishna consciousness and with love and devotion render all kinds of services. He should perform some sort of work for Krishna, and that work should be with love. If a devotee is not intelligent enough to make progress on the path of self-realization, but is sincere and devoted to the activities of devotional service, the Lord gives him a chance to make progress and ultimately attain to him. So, going back here, it is a life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, and it enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we're always anxious, which is also corresponding with this here. So the ocean of Krishna's or Lord Hari's glories are ever expanding, and they're full of all transcendental knowledge as it was laid out in Bhagavad Gita 10:10. And hence, even after giving up all material opulences, it is still blissful, which is also that we can see from Maharaj Priyavrata, how he was a pure soul. He wasn't he decided to take over the kingdom and the material opulences on the instructions of his father and Lord Brahma. But when the time came to give it up, he was ready and was still blissful. So, Hare Krishna, this is all that I had for today. I'm just going to stop sharing the screen.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
you know, how are you?
Good, good. How are you, Hare Krishna? Done with Pranam?
Thank you very much for explaining the text in a way it needs to be understood. And we can see the three steps Priyabrata as you explained. Initially, he was a renounced person and then became attached to family life. And then again, the same cycle started. So we can see this sine wave going up and then again going down. And so this shows, even though he was a renounced order, but in family life he was maintaining a distance. How these material opulences can, because he was very much aware that these material opulences would hurt him in any way, for which he was not agreed to come into this material life. But on the request of his father and grandfather, he had to obtain this activity just to carry out the orders of the Supreme Lord. So we can see, even though he was in material life, but still he was aloof from those activities. It looks like these normal activities, but as you mentioned, he was a renounced order, so he knows the effect of material life on our activities day to day. But then he kept the transcendental activities in such a way that it didn't hurt him in any way. So he finally decided to give up these material activities and landed into the transcendental activities. Because we see this money and woman are the two impediments which actually restrict ourselves in the progress of spiritual advancement. So he, being an advanced devotee, knew very much aware of that incidents. So he was trying to keep aloof from these main things. And as you mentioned in the Chitodarpana Marjanam, that is how it works in our life. And by keeping that thing in line, we need to understand the text, Bhagavad Gita 10 and 10. So there's all this information and education gives us the right direction to keep our alignment with the Lord, in always keeping in mind, but keeping the material activities also parallelly, so that his activities toward the citizen of the kingdom need to be fulfilled also as per the order of the Lord. So this is, we can see a balance of activities, spiritual and material, so nicely fine-tuned. We can learn a lot from these steps and from the life of Priyabrata Maharaj, how to deal with our daily life or material life along with the spiritual life. Thank you very much for explaining in so simple and nice way. Keep it up. Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, we still got a few more minutes. Anybody like to share their reflection or any queries? Please come forward.
Hare Krishna Khushi,
Hare
Krishna
Krishna,
Kantha,
Pranaji.
very nice class. You have described how importance of self-control. Priyabrata is a grihastha, but he is a pure devotee, and how he controlled his self, and also how you tells about the cleaning the heart is very important. That how impurities means goes away with surrendering the lotus feet of Krishna. Also how you compare with that lotus flower and lotus feet and Krishna and holy name all are same. And it should be possible by the Bhakti Yoga. And Bhakti Yoga is the best. And in that way, you have completed with the 10 Bhagavad Gita. So we will get the buddhi from the Lord if we do the Bhakti Yoga. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Yes, well done, and keep it up. We would like to hear more. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for the nice class. I especially liked your point where you said like different people have different levels. That is in terms of like, even for example, you mentioned even sleep. So we shouldn't be judgmental of others, saying that, oh, you should sleep only 2 hours, because different people, as you said, they have different physical needs. So yeah, that I like that point what you said. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna, Krsna Kantha Dasi. Thank you for the nice class. Quite a bit of elaboration unpacking this verse. So many points, important points. What I really like is that Priyavrata Maharaj, initially he was a brahmachari and didn't want to take up the rest of life. It's only by the order of the Supreme Lord he personally came, because then, Brahmaji gave him the instruction. Otherwise, Narad Muni, his spiritual master, and his father did not want him to become brahmachari life. But he accepted this, so it was detached. By the order of the Brahmaji, he became attached. He ruled his kingdom, and he gave up his kingdom. I mean, he says he gave up everything, including his wife, with whom he has, and great opulence. I mean, that is so much detachment. So what it says that brahmacharya life is the foundation. So if the foundation is very strong, even if somebody accepts grata life, eventually they can become detached because they had this spiritual power, potency, and the grace of the spiritual master. So in this case, he was detached, become attached to family, then he became detached. And he said he becomes so, his heart becomes so cleansed, it became the place of pastimes for the Supreme Person of Godhead. And so Prabhupada already elaboration is very wonderful pastimes. Chetadharpana Marjanam, how one's heart is covered. And you explain this by the example of a TV or screen. So all this unearth is within the heart. When it's clean, then all the pastime of the Lord become manifest in one's heart. So many good points, and I must say you gave quite a bit of explanation on this. So congratulations, and as others have mentioned, we'd like to see you more often. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Matsu. Thank you for the wonderful class.
Okay, there being no other reflection, please we'll end the class here. Vanchakalpadrubhischa.
Kripa Sindhu Bhayavacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Our grace Krishna Kantha ki jai. Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.
Hari Hari Bol.
Glories to assembled devotees. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Thank you very much. Krishna
Hare
Kantha.
Krishna.